Y'all, I moved into a haunted house. And to make it even worse, it was in the projects. So in like March or April of 2023, I moved into a townhouse down the way on 33rd, y'all. So my first night in there, it was just me and my son. And my son, he keeps coming to my room telling me that somebody is coming up the stairs. Like, his room was the first room when you got to the top of the stairs. So, like, when you got up there, you turn right, it was his room, and in the middle was mine. He keeps coming in my room. Like, the first night we in there, he like, yeah, mommy, I think somebody is at the bottom of the stairs. I think, someone's coming up the stairs, or they're either, like, at the bottom of the stairs, but I keep hearing somebody on the stairs. So I just try to reassure my son, like, oh, you know what, maybe you just hearing, like, the house settle, or maybe you hearing the neighbors, because we do live in a townhouse. He would not go to bed. He just insisted that somebody was on the stairs. So I just let him sleep with me, and I closed my door and just went on about my night. So I just had took it, like, maybe he was just having a little bit of trouble adjusting to the new house, or, maybe he was just scared, or, him just being a kid. Y'all, after that, shit just started getting weirder. So this is like one night, a couple weeks later, I leave home, and I left my phone at home. And so my location is showing that I'm at home, but I'm not answering my phone or nothing like that. So my friends got worried, and they went to my house to look for me. Like, they go there, but once they get there, all the lights is off in the house, my car not outside or whatever. So they're like looking in the house. They're looking in the kitchen window. Y'all, they say as they looking in there, they can see somebody like walk from the kitchen into the living room, but they can only see like the bottom half of his body. They cannot see. They see it's a boy, and they say he had on like black sweatpants and with like a white line in the middle, and they say he had on like tennis shoes, but they could not see nothing above his torso. So they're like, oh, Jay, Jay dude must be over there or something, and she just maybe not accept the company or whatever. So they just brush it off and they leave. The next day I see them and I'm talking to them. They like, yeah, last night we came to your house. There was a dude walking around in your kitchen and we seen him. We just thought you ain't want to be bothered. And I'm like, no, nobody was in my house last night. I was gone. Like, my house was empty. So I don't, now at this point, I don't really know like what's going on or whatever. So after this, like, shit just kept happening. Like, weird shit just kept happening. So one night I drop my son off at my baby daddy's sister's house, and I leave him there, and I go home and I call my baby daddy. And he's like, as I'm talking to him or whatever, I tell him, like, mid-conversation, like, yeah, I dropped baby G off already, and he gone. And he like, well, if he gone, then who was that talking in the phone when I first got on the phone? Like, it was a little kid talking. I'm like, stop trying to scare me, because I'm at home by myself, whatever and whatever. He like, no, I'm not playing. I thought that, he was over there with you, because it was just a kid talking in the phone. So I'm like, you know what, maybe he was hearing the TV or whatever. I keep just trying to debunk everything myself. So y'all, I go to bed that night and I wake up the next morning, and I want to say it's like right before or as the sun is like, rising. So it's probably like 6 in the morning, and I wake up and I go to the bathroom. Now my room was in the middle, so I had to walk past my son's room to get to the bathroom. As I walk past his room, I hear like a little kid in there talking, like, making noise, like, like, just humming or whatever, like a little kid. So I'm sitting on the toilet or whatever, and I'm I'm still half asleep or whatever. So I'm in my head like, oh my God, I gotta try to, like, get him to lay back down, get him to go back to bed, whatever. He probably gonna be hungry. He gonna want me to go downstairs, make him some food. And it dawned on me, y'all, I dropped my son off last night. So I go in the room, I'm looking around in the room, ain't nothing in there. The TV not on, nothing. But I know, as sure as my name is what it is, I just heard somebody in this room. So, I just keep like rebuking whatever it is that's happening or whatever, but I'm really in my head, I'm trying to ignore it. So after that situation, another time I am going down the stairs. At this particular time, I was at home by myself with nobody in the house but me. And I was just, like cleaning up, straightening up the house or whatever. So I'm going down the stairs. And okay, I forgot to mention that I was pregnant. So I was probably like, I don't even know. I was probably like 7-8 months pregnant. I am walking down the stairs, and I feel 5 fingers and a hand in my back, and somebody pushed me off the stairs. Like, I went flying up the stairs. I went flying from maybe like the 4th, maybe like 3rd or 4th step. So I hit the floor, and I hurt like my ankle, I think. And, you know, so I'm, you know, at this point, I just start praying and rebuking whatever it is that's, you know, in the house or whatever. And, you know, if the next day, like the very next day, I'm standing at the bottom of the stairs. My son is back home at this point. I'm standing at the bottom of the stairs, and I'm waiting on my son to come downstairs, and I'm ready for him to, like, you know, get dressed so we can go. And he gets to, like, the third or the fourth step, and he flies off the stairs. Like, I'm standing there looking at him. He didn't, you know, mess up his footing. He didn't misstep. He didn't trip. He flew off them stairs. Now, I cannot remember who I talked to after, you know, I've seen this, after I'm witnessing all this, but I talked to somebody, and it was a lady, and she ended up telling me, like, whatever is happening in your house, whoever is in your house, whatever spirit or whatever happened before you stayed there, it's centered around the steps in your house. Like, a lot of the activity was around the stairs, but, like, you know, other stuff was always happening. Like, whenever I was on the phone with somebody, they always could say that they could hear, like, a baby crying or a little kid talking or, you know, stuff like that. It was very weird. So now, y'all, it's summertime at this point. Like, we into the summer, so it's maybe, like, June. And I had my little sister over my house, and she had stayed there one night and babysat my son. So I had came home the next morning because I had been out all night. And I came home the next morning, and I asked my son, like, you know, who was over here last night? You know, trying to see if my sister had somebody in my house. So he's like, wasn't nobody over here last night, mommy. It was just me, Sheree, and Jawan. I said, who the fuck is Jawan? My son say, Jawan, my friend, he be over here at night. I'm like, so I go and I'm trying to ask my sister, like, who is Jawan? Like, who do you know that's named Jawan? He like, she like, I don't know nobody named Jawan. I'm like, you gotta know somebody named Jawan, cause Baby G said you had somebody named Jawan over here, whatever. My sister is like, no, I didn't. I don't even know nobody named Jawan. Now, at this point, I'm thinking that she has coached my son into telling me that, like, Jawan is somebody, like, he done made up in his head or something. Cause Jawan ain't no name that no 4-year-old gonna just come up with, you know? The next day, we sitting downstairs, and the mail come through the door. So I told you I live down the way. So when you live down the way, it's just a hole in the door that the mail come through. And we sitting downstairs, and the mail come through the door, and it hit the floor. And I told my sister, get in and tell me, like, who it's addressed to. Is it for me? If it's for me, open it. My sister say, no, this ain't for you. This ain't for nobody that live here. This for somebody named Jawan.
So tonight we have another story that comes from the Appalachian Mountains. This story comes from Jackie, and I just want to say that I was terrified by the end of this one. It really got me. So with that being said, grab your favorite tea and settle in, and let me tell you a scary story, because of course, this is Tea After Midnight. Always so good. This story comes from Jackie. Hi Savannah, my name is Jackie, and I have a scary story that also happened to me in the Appalachian Mountains that I wanted to share with you. I live in the Appalachian Mountains and have my entire life. I live in the countryside, and it's a beautiful place to be, but when it gets dark, things get really creepy out here. My husband is a truck driver, and he goes on long hauls for about 2 weeks at a time, so that leaves me and my 2 children at the house by ourselves. Before the sun sets every night, I check all my windows and doors to make sure they're locked, and I check every curtain and blind in my house, pulling them shut so things don't look in. One night, as the sun was starting to set, I started to check all the windows and doors and pull the curtains too. It gives me a little peace of mind double checking everything since I'm there with my kids alone. The sun wasn't completely set just yet, but it was definitely getting darker. I was in the dining room pulling the curtains shut. When I look out the window and down towards the bottom of my property line, I could see a woman in a white nightgown with long, dark hair that looked really messy. She was just standing there staring at me. I was frozen in fear and could feel how evil her presence was. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up, but I couldn't look away. I was trying to logically explain it away, but then I ran around the wall of my dining room directly into the living room to shut that curtain quickly. But in the 2 seconds it took me to get to the other window in the living room, she was gone. We have several acres of land that are clear of trees, and it's not physically possible for her to have just vanished in 2 seconds. I closed all the curtains and triple-checked every lock. I put the kids in my bed to sleep there with me because I didn't want them alone in their room with whoever or whatever was outside. I stayed up the entire night holding my kids as they slept, and in the morning I called my husband to let him know what I had seen the night before. He wasn't shocked, but was concerned and said that he would come home to be with us. I told him no, that we would be fine, but he insisted. He was at least a day's drive away, so I had to just make it a little bit longer until he got home. He told me to call my parents, who live right down below my house, and see if they would stay with me until he got home. But I didn't want to bother them with something so silly because it was probably my imagination, so I let it go. That day was fine. Nothing unusual or out of the ordinary happened. But then sunset came. Same routine as always, checking the doors and windows and closing all the curtains. And when I got to the dining room, I look out the window, but I didn't see anything. It made me feel slightly better knowing it was probably a one-time thing. But then I get to the living room, and what I saw had me terrified. I get to the living room, and looking out the window, I see the exact same woman standing there staring at me. But this time, she was with a man who was dressed in all black, head to toe, with a tall black hat. I couldn't make out their features, but could clearly see a woman and a man. I truly didn't know what to do, so I pulled out my phone to call my mom, who can see my house from her kitchen window. Mom answered and said, "Hey baby, are you okay?" I was shaking and said, "Go to your kitchen window and look up at my house and tell me if you see a woman and a man standing there." I could hear her running to the window, and she said, "No, I don't see anyone there." I told her that I'm looking at a woman dressed in a white nightgown and a man wearing all black with a tall top hat right now. She said she didn't see anyone out there, so I started to flip the porch light on and off, and she said she could see that, but didn't see anyone out there. On the final time I flipped the porch light off, the man and the woman disappeared into thin air. They were there 1 second and gone the next. I stood there frozen in fear, not knowing what to do, because what I had just seen shouldn't be possible. I could hear my dad come to the phone and say he is coming up there to stay with me so I'm not alone. I felt a little relieved. I went to my kids' playroom and they are sitting in the floor playing, and I told them to come to my bed to get ready for sleep. I get them laid down and I walk into the living room to wait for my dad. I was in there for about 30 seconds when my phone rang. It was my mom. She said, "Honey, are you outside right now?" Terrified, I said, "No, I'm in the living room. Why?" I heard my dad in the background say, "Tell her to get the kids and go to her room and lock the door. There's a woman at her front door and a man is walking around the back of the house." I ran to my room and jumped on the bed with my kids. I had one in each arm, holding them close, sitting in a pitch black room, terrified of what my dad just said was outside. Not even a minute later, I heard footsteps outside on the porch and what sounded like my dad's voice, and I felt an instant relief. I heard knocking at the front door and my dad say, "It's me, let me in." I ran to the front door and was about to open it to let my dad in, but something told me not to open that door. I called out and said, "Dad, is that you?" But he didn't answer. I heard knocking again, so I asked louder, "Dad, is that you?" But again, no answer. I ran back to my room with my kids and called my parents' house, and Mom answered. She said, "Dad is getting in his truck and coming up there right now. Do not go to the front door. That woman is still there." I was in full chills because whatever was at my front door claiming to be my dad, wanting me to let it in, was definitely not my dad. As I'm on the phone with Mom, I heard her gasp, and she said, "The woman's gone." I said, "What do you mean gone?" Mom said, "She just disappeared into thin air." I could hear her voice trembling. She then said, "My dad just pulled up and is walking around the house checking everything out." After he checked everything, Mom said he was on the front porch to go let him in. I went back to the living room and said, "Dad, is that you?" He replied back, "Yes, it's me." I opened the door and he came in and helped me get everything I needed to stay with them that night. We went down the hill to my parents' house and got the kids in bed and stayed there until my husband got home the next day. Once my husband was home, we all sat there and told him what had happened, and I could tell he was very disturbed by what we were telling him. None of us had an explanation or even an idea of what we saw. We just knew it wasn't good. I called my pastor that morning and asked him what he thought we should do. He came by that afternoon and prayed over the land and mine and my parents' houses. He blessed our homes with anointing oil, and ever since then, we've not had any issues or bad experiences. I pray we never have to go through something like that ever again. It was easily the most bone-chilling experience we've ever been through, and I'm just so thankful my parents were there that night. Yeah, so like I said, that one got me pretty good. So I honestly don't really know what this could be, but my guess would be like a mimic, because it was mimicking her dad's voice, but then also maybe a flesh pedestrian, if you will. I'm not really sure. You guys let me know down in the comments what you think this could be, but I'm serious, that one gave me chills. One night it shows itself to her, the next night it comes back with something else, but not only her mom and dad saw it too. But I'm absolutely terrified at the thought that she thought it was him at first, and I'm so glad she had that feeling to not let whatever was out there in. So terrifying. So you guys let me know what you think it could possibly be, because I don't know. I want to say mimic, but I don't know. But that does conclude this episode of Tea After Midnight. If you have any personal scary stories you want to share with me, they do not have to be about the Appalachian Mountains. You can send me any scary story you have. I would love to read them. You can send it to my email, which is going to be right here on the screen, or I'm also going to put it in the caption of this video below. But I just want to say thank you so much to every single person that's here supporting. You guys mean the world to me, and I want you to know how much I love you. But thank you for watching. I hope you have the best night. I love you, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye.
Story time on how my friend's house got broken into while we were all there. That was in the middle of the forest on a lake. Like, literally, like a scary movie. So there's 8 of us, 8 of my friends going to my friend's house with no parents. It's just 8 16-year-olds going to this house. So I freshly have my license. I'm driving there. It's an hour away from my house. It's probably like 7. I'm driving there, and I get close to our house, and it's in the middle of buttfuck nowhere. Like, when I say I have no service, I'm driving in the middle of trees and dirt paths. Like, I'm shitting myself. So I'm crying because I get lost 30 times. I finally find her house. This is very crucial. Let me set the scene for you. I get there. It is literally like a scary movie, guys. It's in the middle of the forest. It's like a glass house. You can see into it, and it's unfurnished on the inside. Like, it has a couch and a bed. That's it. And it has like a sauna in the main bathroom and like a big ass basement. Everyone finally gets there, and we're talking, and the whole night we're having fun, but it's like eerie vibes. We're like, who would die first in a scary movie? Like, all these hypothetical things. Not thinking anything of it, of course. Long story short, I'm sleeping in the main bedroom where everyone was hanging out. I'm sleeping. I have one friend next to me and another friend next to me. Everyone else is outside in the living room. There's a glass window, and the couch is underneath it. And they were being so loud out there. They weren't sleeping, and I was just used to it. And all of a sudden, I hear screaming at the top of their fucking lungs. And I thought they were just fucking around, so I got up and I was like, shut the fuck up, like, you guys are so loud. One of my friends is like the most nonchalant person ever. She's like, whatever. She comes sprinting full speed with the like most scared look I've ever seen in my life. And everyone is sprinting after her. People are like falling. And I was like, what is happening? So I get my ass up. I jump in the bathroom. I drag my friends in with me. Everyone gets into the bathroom except 2 people. I'll get to that in a second. And we lock that shit. And I still think they're joking. And so I'm not really fazed until I look over and my friend Lucy is on the phone with 911. Keep in mind, I still don't know what is happening. People are crying and shaking. And so I was like, okay, so this isn't a joke. So I start freaking the fuck out too. And then they're like, someone's outside. And I was like, what the fuck do you mean someone's outside? Like, who's outside? And then they're like, where's Chase and Maddie? That's 2 of our friends. Where's Chase and Maddie? We all start freaking out. We're like, oh my God, they fucking died. Like the guy got him. Like, what? And all the doors are unlocked. All of them. What had happened is they were laying on the couch. My friend gets up, and there's a man in all black with a fucking witch mask on his face. I get chills talking about this. A witch mask on his face. And he's crouched down, like, at the seal of the window. And my friend saw him, and she was like, guys, I'm laughing because it's funny now, but it's not funny. And that's when they all came screaming. And he got up, and apparently he was this big fucking guy. He started banging on the window while they were all running. And Maddie and Chase was locking the basement door. He went all the way down to the basement. That was pitch black. Locked the door. Maddie was at the front door banging back at the guy. The guy was banging on the front door now. He went around. Maddie's banging back at him, trying to lock the door, which they're crazy for that. Like, God bless both of them. This house has, like, so many doors. Like, everything is unlocked. All the windows are unlocked. This is, like, 4 minutes, so let me know if you guys want a part 2.
I feel like this doppelganger story could have been really bad because someone could have actually been really hurt. Would this be considered a mimic or a doppelganger? I don't know. You tell me at the end. So this guy gets home from work. He goes into his bedroom and he sees that the restroom inside the bedroom has the light on and the door is locked. So out loud he says, "Are you in the restroom, my love?" to his wife. And he said that his wife was like, "Yeah, I'm in here." So he starts talking to his wife about the day that he had, you know, people out of work who annoyed him, what happened, things like that. And after all that, he's like, "Hey, where are the pills for headaches? I just need to take one right now." And he says that his wife responded, "Oh, it's right there on top of the black dresser." So he looks at the black dresser that they have. He does see some pills on top of the dresser. So he thinks, okay, I'm gonna go to the kitchen, get some water. I'll come back and then I'll take the pills. So he opens the door from his bedroom to walk out to the kitchen. And in the hallway, he sees his wife. His wife was actually on her way to the bedroom, but when he sees her, he just went pale, like he was in shock. And obviously she looks at him as like, what's wrong with you? Like, why are you looking at me like that? The wife even said that she got so scared because she thought maybe there was something behind her because of the way that he was looking at her. So she got scared out of just his reaction to her. So obviously her husband's like, "Weren't you just in the restroom? I was just having a full-blown conversation with you." And she's like, "No, I just got here. I was at the grocery store. I just walked in." And he was like, no, you even told me where the pills were. I checked the pills. They're on top of the black dresser. What do you mean you weren't in the restroom? You weren't even here like at all." And she's like, "No, I was not here. And what are you talking about, the pills on top of the dresser? You didn't take them, did you?" And he's like, "No, I was about to go get some water so that I could take them." And she's like, "Do not take those pills." So it turns out that she did leave those pills on top of that black dresser close to the restroom because those pills are what you're supposed to dissolve in water to clean. They're like cleaning pills, not for you to intake. They're not headache pills. They're just strong chemicals. Can you fucking imagine if the wife hadn't got that? He would have taken those pills and probably something bad would have happened to him. But that's not even the end of it, because she says that there's other encounters that have happened, and the other one was with her son. The son swears that her voice called him to the second floor of the room and told him to look over the balcony, and that's when they caught him like leaning a little too far, and God knows what would have happened to him is what she says. But yeah, fuck that. I would not be listening to, okay, this is the one and only time I would have told the kid, do not listen to your mom's voice unless she's standing right in front of you. Because would this be a mimic or a doppelganger? Because we're not seeing her, we were just hearing her. But like, two people could have very well been injured because of them listening to her voice. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments.
Okay, so this story that came from one of my followers, her name is Jordan, gave me full body chills. She said, "I wanted to share one of the most unsettling and creepiest things that has ever happened to me, and it happened when I was just 10 years old. One morning," she said, "she walked into school, and it was a day like any other day. She walks by some of her classmates and friends and say hello. They say hello back. And then she walks by the principal, and they give her a half smile and then turn and go about their morning. All normal so far. So then she makes her way into the cafeteria to get some breakfast, and one of her favorite teachers passes by her. So Jordan greets her and says, 'Good morning, Mrs. Colquitt,' but she didn't respond the way Jordan expected. She kind of just looked down at her with a really weird look on her face. She walks by Jordan, and Jordan whirls around because she wants to go speak to her again. And she notices that Mrs. Colquitt is turned around and walking away, but her head was completely turned around, facing Jordan. She also said that she was smiling at her, but not just a normal smile. Her smile was way too big for her face. So this startles her pretty good, so she books it to class. So she gets to her classroom and she's already rattled. And then she quickly notices that the mood in the room is just all wrong. She said that everybody was really sad looking. Some people were crying. Others were whispering to each other. Even the teacher was nowhere to be seen, and she just knew something was really wrong. So Jordan goes in and sets her stuff down, and one of the other students walks up to her and they're like, "So did you hear what happened last night?" She goes, "Mrs. Colquitt and her daughter got into a really bad wreck." And Jordan's thinking to herself, oh, okay, that makes sense. Maybe that's why she was so weird this morning, that she was still pretty shaken up too. But almost as if he could read her mind, he kind of just shakes his head. He continued on to say, "No, you don't understand. Her and her daughter died last night." He also said that they both passed instantly. And this did not make sense to Jordan. I mean, she just saw her. And before she was even able to say anything else, a teacher did walk in the room and announce that, yes, She and her daughter both did get into a wreck and pass away the night before. Unfortunately, they were hit by a drunk driver. So Jordan spends the rest of the day in a really confused haze. She's not sure what to believe. She's just running it through her head like, why did I think I saw her? What was going on with her neck? Why did she have that huge smile? So then she goes to the bathroom, and while she's in the hallway, she hears the principal and another teacher talking in the faculty lounge. He said, yeah, little Katie went instantly, and Sandra, Mrs. Colquitt, her neck was broken. They say her head was turned all the way around. Jordan said that at this point, she wanted to puke. She goes, I did see her that morning, but not the version that I usually see. She says she is 35 years old now, and still to this day, it bothers her. How freaking crazy is that? Guys, let us know your thoughts in the comments. I know Jordan will be in there looking. And if you have a creepy or spooky story of your own, I would love to hear it. And if you're new here, follow for more creepy story time.
Let's read a true and scary story. This one is from Rosie. I'm a 21-year-old religious listener from Australia, and I thought I'd share a scary encounter that happened to me and 11 other girls in our boarding school dormitory back in 2018 when I was in year 7. To give some context, when you're in year 7 at this particular boarding school, all the year 7 girls in your boarding house shared one dorm together. Ours was called Little Dorm. There were 12 year 7 girls in one long room with 6 beds on each side. At the end of the room, there was a heavy wooden fire escape door that led to a concrete stairwell, which took you downstairs and outside to the fire evacuation area. Now, onto the story. And buckle in, it's a long one. It sounds fake, but I promise on my life this happened. It was 10:38 p.m. on a Thursday night in the middle of August, winter in Australia. The house mistress, Miss Jensen, had just finished her final head count and walkthrough before going to her quarters for the night. A few of us in Little Dorm decided to play Spotlight, a version of hide and seek where the seeker uses a torch. All 11 girls, minus the seeker, were quietly running around trying to find places to hide before the seeker we chose, a girl named Darcy, came back into the room to find us. When our hiding time was up, Darcy came back in with her booklight and started searching under desks and beds. After about 10 minutes of "found you" and "I could see you," all 11 of us were huddled in a circle in the middle of the dorm. But then, one by one, we realized someone was missing. One girl hadn't been found. It was Laura. Laura was quiet and didn't speak much, but she was the sweetest girl you could ever meet. We had to find her before an emergency head count was called. All of us started crawling around on the floor with our booklights, looking under beds and opening cupboards. That's when one of the girls, James, walked past the fire escape door and suddenly stopped dead in her tracks, staring at the floor. She turned to us and said, "There are 3 fingers poking out from under the fire door." James leaned her ear against the door and said she could hear something whimpering and crying behind it. Because the door was so thick, the crying sounded distant, like it was miles away. At first, we thought she was lying to scare us, but then 2 more girls pressed their ears against the door and confirmed that the faint crying was real. What was making those noises, and how did it get behind the fire door? One important thing I didn't mention earlier, the fire doors were rigged with emergency alarms. If opened without the special key that disarmed the system, a piercing alarm would ring out until the fire department, who were automatically called, turned it off. We all jumped to the same conclusion. It had to be Laura, clawing and crying in the cold concrete stairwell. No one else was missing. But how did she get in there without triggering the alarm? A girl named Alice ran downstairs to Miss Jensen's room and banged on the door until she answered, screaming that Laura was stuck in the fire escape stairwell and no one knew how she got there without setting off the alarm. I have never seen a grown woman run so fast in my life. Miss Jensen came sprinting down the hallway toward Little Dorm, yelling for us to move out of her way and for someone to go to the duty room and call 000, the emergency services number in Australia, from the landline and request an ambulance. It felt like time had slowed to a standstill as Miss Jensen fumbled with her keys, dropping them while trying to find the right one to open the door. In that moment, I could feel everyone holding their breath. Finally, the right key was found. The door creaked open. We were immediately hit with the most foul, rotting odor. The stairwell smelled as if an animal carcass had been left in the sun for weeks. At the bottom of the stairs was Laura. She looked so small, like her life force had been drained from her. Her skin was gray and her eyes looked hollow. Miss Jensen slowly went down the stairs, followed by 11 terrified 12-year-olds, to witness what I can only describe as a nightmare. Laura's pajamas were ripped at the legs, and she was sitting in a yellow puddle. What confused me most was that the liquid was also all over her shirt, as if it had been poured or splashed on her. It's been 9 years since I last saw Laura. The last image I have of her is being carried on a stretcher into an ambulance, rushed off to the hospital in a blur of sirens and flashing red and blue lights. I know you said the last image that you have of her is being carried out into a stretcher, but did you ever see her again after that? Or was that the last time you ever saw her? And I'm guessing that she never opened up about what she saw or what happened to her, because that's insane. There are so many different layers to this that make no sense. Like, how did she get into the stairwell? What was that yellow puddle? Because at first I was like, oh, maybe she peed herself. But if it was all over herself, then what was it? And what was the odor that was coming from the stairwell too? I have so many questions. This is so terrifying. Thank you so much, Rosie, for sharing this story, and I hope that Laura is okay. If you guys have any stories you'd like me to read, please email them to me and I will get to them if I can, and I will see you in the next one.
Found this Reddit story and it is super long, and I started reading like probably the first like eighth of it, and it was already 2.5 minutes, so I just said I'm just gonna summarize it. So basically, since she was the age of 4, she started encountering really terrifying experiences. So she lived in an isolated area. There were only about 2 houses, including her own, that were there, and one house had a lake. When she was little, she had a really bad problem with throwing tantrums, and the first experience happened while she was throwing one of these. She said she was in the kitchen asking her sister to help her with something. Her sister wasn't coming fast enough, I guess, so she started throwing a tantrum and screaming. She said suddenly everything went silent. The clock in the kitchen stopped ticking, the buzzing of the fridge stopped, and she heard this really loud stomp, kind of like when somebody gets mad at you. This is where it gets crazy. She said a mutilated corpse began sliding into the kitchen. It was like violently shoved into the doorway. Its eyes were bulging. She said it reminded her of like snails. She jumped on her kitchen table because she was so scared, and as quickly as it came in was as quickly as it left. A few years later, she and her family moved, and then it intensified. She began seeing a dark figure outside of her bedroom window at night. It had white pupils and like an unhinged mouth, like it would just hang so low. One time it even came into her room and it pinned her onto her mattress and shoved her down so deep that she barely could breathe. She thought that maybe it was a nightmare, so she laid back down, and it happened again. Objects was always moving around on their own. One night where a giant clump of hair just appeared on her bed when she woke up one morning. One time she was in her living room and she saw this long hairy arm come up from behind her chair and then go back down. Then she ended up running out of her house in a panic. Another time where she was like walking her dog near a forest and she saw some like creature come from behind the tree and stare at her. And it had that same claw that she saw from behind the chair. She said she like screamed for help, but no one around her saw anything that she saw. As she got older, she continued having these weird, strange experiences. She would see shadow figures in glass around corners. She said doors and cabinets and drawers would open and close on their own all the time around her. She would hear footsteps in empty rooms at night. She would hear like bags rustling throughout the house when she was alone. One time she woke up around like 2 a.m. and she saw someone pressed up against the glass in her bedroom. She turned away and then she heard footsteps approach her bed, and then she felt a cold breeze hit her neck. She would experience full body paralysis, and there'd be like a massive black shadow hovering over her. She would hear people like stumbling around down her halls, like trying to wiggle doors open even if she was alone or if no one was awake in the house. Throughout her life, she always saw dark figures peeking from behind doors at her. She says she's never used drugs and she's never drank, and she strongly believes that these experiences are real. The experiences stopped about 5 years ago, but the memories are so vivid. And this happened to her, I think she said she was about 18 years old when it stopped. The reason why I'm not going to say this is schizophrenia is because schizophrenia typically hits in adolescence and then adulthood, and schizophrenia is not very typical in childhood. And also, if it was schizophrenia, she would continue to be having these experiences. She would need medication to make them go away. She thinks that this is a demon that was tormenting her. And honestly, I think it is too, because demons are known to like torment you and then lie dormant. So I'm like, is this thing just lying in wait to like torture her again? I don't know. Let me know what you guys think this is, or if you or someone you know has ever experienced this, send me a message. I want to hear about it.
The Native Americans believed that everything in the woods was alive and that the forest itself was a living entity. Now, there are a set of particular rules that you should follow if you want to survive in the woods. Now, the first rule of the woods is that you never go out at night. Nighttime in the forest is a whole other world. That's when everything comes alive, and that's when things are the most dangerous. Number 2, never go into the woods alone, because the woods have a way of playing games with you. And having someone else by your side helps you to keep your bearings. Number 3, never ever disrespect nature. Do not trample on flowers. Do not pick any flowers. Do not damage any trees. And most definitely, do not take anything out of nature. If you feel like you are being watched, you probably are. And you should leave. Because there are things in the woods that can see you before you see them. Always, always have a light with you. If you're out in the woods at night, a light will keep you safe. As my grandma said, a light keeps the dark away. The 6th rule of the woods is don't ever stare directly at the trees. Don't look inside them. Just pretend that they are there, they are to be respected, and just walk around them. The 7th rule you must remember of the woods: do not scream, do not make a lot of noise. Be quiet, be respectful of the nature that is around you. And finally, the 8th rule: if you find yourself in a situation where they are after you, you either have the option to fight or simply let the woods take you away. Now, this is a story as to why you should follow these rules in the woods. There was this man named Isaac. Isaac said that he used to go hiking at this spot near his house. Well, this particular day, he gets out and he goes onto his regular trail that he would hike. And he said he just had this feeling like something was different this day. He could just tell something was off. But he continued anyways. As he continued hiking down this trail, so that's when all of a sudden he felt this weird breeze kind of blow on his back. And everything just got quiet. And he started to hear what sounded like whispers coming from the ground. And they were all around him. And he said that's when all of a sudden he sees this deer. Except this deer was walking on 2 legs. He freaks out, he panics, he takes off running back down the trail as fast as he can. But he kept finding himself going in circles. He was continuously getting lost. And he said he almost felt like the woods was playing tricks on him and was trying to lure him back to the same spot. But he remembered which way was north, and he continued following in that direction and eventually made it out of the woods. But he said he learned that day you have to be very careful when you enter into the forest.
I may have made a mistake while living in my haunted home in Japan. You guys can tell me if I made a mistake. I feel like I probably shouldn't have done it. Let's get into it. When I came home from school one day, I dropped off my backpack and I went to little Kobini, the little convenience store down the street. And I bought myself some Japanese candy. Some chocolates, some haichus. I don't know if you guys know what haichus are, but they're those little packets of individually wrapped little fruit flavored candies. And I brought it back home. Now I had this idea. Bear with me. I had this idea because I was really into Harry Potter at the time. I know there's a closet where when you put things in there, they disappear. You might know where I'm going with this. And it was like a little experiment. I was really curious what would happen. So I took the little packet of haichu candy and I put it in my closet and I shut the door. And I left it there. The next morning, I go to open up my closet door and the candy is gone. I shit you not, the candy was gone. And I went downstairs and I asked my mom, I go, hey mom, did you take my haichus? And she was like, what haichus? And I'm very careful when I go get candy that I don't tell anybody that I'm getting candy because that's my money, that's my candy, those are my snacks. So I was like, okay, maybe she didn't take my haichus. So then I thought, my sister. So I asked my little sister, I go, did you take my haichus? And she was like, what haichus? No, I didn't touch your haichus. She didn't even know what a haichu was. She was like, what is that? And I was like, oh, shit. The haichus were gone. And when we were moving out of the house, packing up all of our things, I never found that packet of haichus. It was nowhere in my closet. It wasn't misplaced anywhere in the house. I fed the closet creature candy. And it was the only time I did it. I never talked to it. I never engaged with it. That was the only time where I was like, cause and effect, what's gonna happen? Which I thought was interesting. I thought I'd share. Maybe it was a mistake to feed it. I don't know. I don't know what happened to my haichus. They were right on the ground of my closet. Just put the package there and I shut the door. I still don't know how to feel about it all these years later.
You can't make this stuff up. Might have known the story of real-life boogeyman.
I love history, especially if it's a little bit creepy. The history of Leap Castle was violent even from the very beginning, before it was even built, and it started with the O'Bannon clans. Two O'Bannon brothers were kind of fighting for leadership of the O'Bannon clan. They decided that they would leap off of the area that the castle was going to be built. Whoever survived would take leadership. But it wouldn't end there, because after the castle was built, the O'Carroll's clan really liked the castle and decided that they wanted it, so they took ownership, and it wasn't pretty. Now, this castle was built in 1250. I'm not sure when the O'Carrolls took over, but eventually in 1649 it would be passed down to the Darby family. This time it was done so by marriage. But the O'Carrolls did have to fight for ownership of the castle again when Gerald Fitzgerald, Earl of, I'm going to say this wrong, so correct me down in the comments, Kildare, decided that he wanted to seize the castle. Now, he did fail at this, but then 3 years later he would try again, and this time it would ruin some of the castle itself. In the 17th century, the ownership was under the Darby family. One of the O'Carroll daughters married the English Captain Darby. Their son, Jonathan Darby, had a treasure that he hid on the grounds. Now, he used 2 men to help him bury this treasure, but he figured that the best way to keep it safe was to take the lives of the 2 men who helped him. Eventually, he was in prison for treason, and when he was released, the castle had changed so much that he didn't know where this treasure was anymore. Legend has it that the treasure is still hidden on these grounds. Now, the chapel is called the Bloody Chapel, and this is because there was more violence that happened here. One of the clan leaders, he passed away that year, and there was a disagreement about who would take over next. Thaddeus O'Carroll was supposed to be the next of kin, and he was supposed to be the priest of the O'Carroll family. But his younger brother, One-Eyed O'Carroll, pushed his blade into his back. This all happened during Mass, so unfortunately, Thaddeus would pass away in front of all of his friends and family, and they all had to watch. Now, it is rumored that this is one of the most haunted places in all of the world, and that Thaddeus still haunts the chapel to this day. Now, things are only going to get creepier from here, because in 1922, there was a group of men working on the castle, and they found a hidden dungeon behind the walls in the Bloody Chapel. They found a deep hole in the ground that essentially people would be tossed into, and there were spikes at the bottom. They found over 150 skeletons in this hole, with some of them dating back to the mid-1800s, meaning that it hadn't been that long since it had been used. Now, when people visit now, they often get the overwhelming urge to throw themselves into the hole. Is this, I don't know, something weird going on there? Because it kind of feels like it. But the history just keeps getting weirder, because the O'Carrolls hired 40 members of the McMarrin clan to train them in new war techniques. After they were trained, they decided to throw a feast kind of as a celebration. But unknown to the McCannons, and I probably said that wrong as well, but the feast that they threw and the food that they had was all poisoned. Now, the O'Carrolls did this so that they didn't have to pay the other clan for training them. So it is also rumored that all of the McMannons, they also roam this castle. They found another secret murder room in this castle that apparently they used to kill each other's relatives. I don't know, man. There's a lot of vicious history in this castle. Okay, so 1991 rolls around, and Sean Ryan and his wife decide to buy this place and kind of restore it, bring it back to its former glory. But as soon as they started renovating it, Sean and his wife had several accidents. As an example, Sean was pulled off a ladder twice and was hurt. There was all kinds of accidents that were happening until finally Sean got fed up and decided to tell the spirits, like, hey, I'm just trying to fix your house. You can stay. It was after that that things got better. There are so many ghosts in this area, like an old man who is often seen sitting at the main fireplace. He's harmless. There's also two little girls. They have been named Emily and Charlotte. Apparently, Emily died at the age of 11. There's also a little girl who is seen falling from great heights and disappearing before she hits the ground, and another little girl who walks with a limp because of a deformed leg. There is another spirit that is often seen with the little girls, and she is known as the governess because she takes care of them. There is another ghost that is often seen. She is a woman, and she is often in a state of undress, and she screams twice and then disappears. But her screams are supposed to be terrifying, but she doesn't hurt anybody. But there is one ghost that is not necessarily a ghost, but more of an entity. So Mildred Darby started practicing black magic while she lived at the castle. She apparently unleashed something called the primitive elemental entity. Now, this entity is unpredictable and scary. Someone said that they were in the gallery and they were looking at the floor when they felt a hand on their shoulder. I'm just going to read their description. The thing had the size of a sheep, and it was thin and shadow-like. The face was human, and it was not. His decomposed eyes showed some kind of lust. At that point, I smelled a horrible smell, which made me ill. It was the smell of a decomposing body. I don't know about you, but that's enough to make me not ever want to visit this place. But would you? Would you go check this place out? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments and follow for more spooky things.
I need to tell you guys this ghost story. My house has a reputation. People don't like staying over. And after everything that's happened here, I don't really blame them. I'm the youngest in a family of 5, and for some reason, my mom and I seem to experience the worst of it. Whatever is in this house doesn't act the same way when everyone's around. It waits. It shows itself when someone is alone, quiet, distracted, vulnerable. My mom always says talking about it too much just makes things worse, that giving it attention seems to invite it closer. But I'm going to tell you anyway. I'll start with the story my mom tells the most. About 2 years ago, when she was finishing college, she wasn't working, so she spent most days home alone doing schoolwork. She always worked in the office, and her desk was constantly covered in papers, notes, assignments, books, everything spread out in complete chaos. One afternoon, she stepped into the kitchen to grab something to eat. She was gone for less than a minute. She walked back into the office and saw all of her papers floating in the air above her desk, just for a split second. The moment her brain caught up with what her eyes were seeing, they all dropped at once, scattering across the floor. They hadn't been stacked near the edge. There was no breeze, no explanation for how they could have fallen on their own. She just stood there, staring at the mess, knowing she had not imagined it. Around that same time, she started seeing something else. A shadow, not attached to anything, not cast by light, just there. She says it felt like it followed her from room to room while she was alone, always just at the edge of her vision, never fully forming, never disappearing completely either. My sisters have had their own experiences too. My oldest sister once had a vivid dream where she was performing an exorcism. She said that it felt intense and real, like she wasn't fully asleep. When she woke up, she found 3 long scratches down her back. My second sister had an experience in the basement, where both of our rooms are. She was playing alone in her room when she suddenly felt something hit her head. She reached up and found one of her toys. A squishy was tangled in her hair. She hadn't leaned back. She hadn't thrown it. She was completely alone. There was nowhere it could have come from. And as for me, I've had too many encounters to count. So I'll just share 2. The first happened recently, just a few nights ago. I was alone in my basement room, getting ready for bed. My sister's room connects to mine, separated only by a curtain, but she wasn't home. I laid down, letting myself relax, when I heard it. Breathing, right outside my door. Slow, steady, close. I felt instant chills, like something was standing there, listening to me, watching me. The only noise in my room was my fan, and I know exactly what that sounds like. And this wasn't it. I didn't move. I didn't open the door. I just waited until the sound stopped. My second experience happened on New Year's Day. I was asleep when my phone rang at exactly 3:42 in the morning. An unknown caller. I didn't answer. After 4 o'clock, I eventually fell back asleep. When I woke up later that morning, something felt wrong. I checked my phone and I realized that I had been on Do Not Disturb the entire night. If you know how Do Not Disturb works on an iPhone, you know a call only goes through if the same number calls twice. This only rang once, and it still showed unknown caller ID. There was no explanation for how it got through. I don't know who or what called me, but it feels like something wanted me awake. Like it wanted me scared. Whatever is here doesn't always show itself, but it's patient and it's watching.
What if I told you that you should never ask your dog if they were human in their past life? There's an old belief that animals, especially dogs, carry their own memories from their past life before us. And sometimes those memories are buried deep into their head. However, some people say dogs understand far more than what we think. Have you ever asked your dog a question and they just stare at you without their tails wagging, without any emotion, without any expression? They just stare at you. Some believe that asking your pet about their past life and if they were human can trigger something deep inside of them. Memory, a recognition, something they were never meant to remember. There are stories of dogs all of a sudden acting different, avoiding eye contact, wanting to be away from you, growling at themselves in the mirrors, and acting super weird. There are certain creepy folklores of dogs once being humans, and now they're trapped, punished, paying for their sins. However, what do you think, and would you ask your dog tonight if they were human or if they remember anything from their past life?
There's an old saying that you should always close your curtains at night because you can allow what's outside to be invited in. Now, this is a story from Eastern Tennessee. There was this man named Levi, and Levi said he lived in this house that was right next to the woods. And he said this particular night, he went to bed as usual, and he started having this dream. And he said in this dream, there was this man staring at him from his bedroom window. Said he had pale white skin, no nose, no mouth, and these solid black eyes. And on top of his head, he had a couple scraggly pieces of hair. And he said he was just looking at him in this dream. And then all of a sudden, he said he heard a voice say, "Come outside." And he wakes up, and he said right away he looked out his window, and sure enough, that man was standing outside of his window. And then he just took off into the woods. So he was kind of a little freaked out by that, but was like, maybe I was just dreaming that still, and it was all in my head. Until he looks at the window and he sees what looks like a face print. A couple weeks later, David said, he goes to sleep, and this time he has a dream. He's in his house and he's walking into his kitchen. And he said when he looked out his back kitchen door, he could see this same man, creature, whatever you want to call it, outside on his back porch. And he said this thing was sort of bent over and it was pacing back and forth, just moving its shoulders. He said it then stopped at the door window and it turned and it looked at him and it said, "Come outside." And he said he woke up and he was like, man, that dream just felt like really real. So he walks out to his back porch and he looks, there's no one out there. But when he looks down at the snow on the porch, he can see what look like footprints. So David didn't know, Levi didn't know what to make of this. And he, at the time, just thought, it was just bad nightmares he was having. So a couple weeks later after this, he goes to bed again one night. And he says he has this dream. And in this dream, once again, he's in his bedroom, laying in his bed. And he says he hears the front door open. And he said all of a sudden he heard footsteps kind of, moving through the living room, down the hallway. And then his door opens. And he said in walks this white creature, bent over with its shoulders kind of moving as it walked. And he said he came right over to his bed and it sat on his stomach. And he said the whole time he just couldn't move. He said this thing just kind of was like smiling at him as it's sitting on top of him. And he said it turned and it looked at him and it said, I said, come outside. And then he said, he lifted up his arm and it scratched him right on his side. He wakes up and it was like, that seemed all too real. He lifts up his shirt, and in the place where he got scratched in the dream, he had this huge scratch. And so the next day, he goes to his neighbor's house and he's like, hey, this is going to sound weird, but like, have you ever seen sort of like a weird guy that's been, looking in windows or anything? And he said his neighbor just turned and had this like shocking look on his face. And he was like, you mean the pale white guy with, a couple strands of hair and the solid black eyes? And he's like, yeah, how did you know? And he goes, when I first moved here, I used to leave my curtains open and I would see him peeking in my window, and he would tell me to come outside. And he said, so after that, I started keeping my curtains closed at night. And so Levi said after he had heard that, he never slept at night without the curtains closed in his bedroom. One of the things I often tell people is do not play with a Ouija board, because Ouija boards are essentially a doorway. And when you open that door, anything can come through. It's almost like setting up this beacon up in the air, and you are inviting everything to come into your life. Now, I heard this story. There was this young boy named Colton. And Colton and his buddies decided they were going to play with a Ouija board one night. And, they had fun. They didn't know how this pendulum was moving by itself. And, it kind of thrilled them and everything. But they didn't think anything of it. So Colton, he takes the Ouija board and he puts it in his closet. Later that night, when he's sleeping, he starts hearing like a banging sound in his closet. And all of a sudden, when he jumps up out of bed, he looks over at his closet and the door slowly opens. And he gets up and like looks in the closet. There's no one in there. So he's like, that's kind of weird, but he kind of shakes it off, right? The next night, when he's in his bedroom once again, right? He's laying down in his bed. He can't sleep. All of a sudden, he hears this banging sound again coming from the closet. And the closet door opens by itself. The next morning, when he wakes up, he finds the Ouija board is sitting on his bed. So he thinks, you know what? I am done with this Ouija board. Like, I shouldn't have messed with it. I'm done with this. So he takes it out back and he starts a fire. And he starts trying to burn this Ouija board. As he's burning this thing and it's on fire, he hears just disembodied voices. He hears screams. And he thinks, okay, this thing is just ashes now. Everything's fine. Well, it was for a couple weeks, like nothing happened. Until one night, he wakes up and he said he just felt like the air was like very thick. And he had his bedroom door open at the time. Well, all of a sudden, his bedroom door slams shut and his bed just starts shaking violently. And he said, it felt like there was an earthquake. He jumps out of bed and stuff on his shelf just starts flying at him across the room. And so he, is running to the door, trying to get the door open, but something like is holding it shut. He starts screaming, for his parents. And when his parents come, the door unlocks. He opens the door and he tells his parents, what had happened. They don't believe him. So he said, things just kept getting significantly worse. And every night he was just like tormented by something. And he said, about 6-7 months into this happening, right, this thing tormenting him, he goes over to his grandma's house one day. And when he walks into his grandma's house and stuff, he starts talking to her and he looks over on a shelf. She has a Ouija board on the shelf. And he's like, wait a second, that is the Ouija board that I burned in the fire, the box and everything. And he goes, Grandma, where did you get that? Do you know what that is? And she goes, oh no, honey, someone left a board game on my front door. And so I brought it in, but I couldn't figure out how to play it. And he said, give me that. And he grabbed it and he takes off running with it, right? So he takes it out into the woods. He buries this thing. And he thinks, okay, maybe this is the end of it. And once again, same thing. Every night, just stuff is happening. Stuff's flying across the room. His bed is shaking, He starts waking up with scratches all over his body. He starts smelling a very foul sulfur smell in his room. And so he goes to a person who is a paranormal investigator and says, what do I do? Like, I ever since I've messed with this Ouija board, something has been following me and like attached to me. And this paranormal investigator said, well, basically, you need to go take this Ouija board and, say that I renounce you. I do not accept you into my life. Like, I am not inviting you. You need to leave. So he goes back out into the woods where he had buried this Ouija board, except it's dug up and it's not there anymore. And so he said, after that, like, it sort of, everything stopped for a little while. It came back, but it was very sporadic. But he said still to this day, like, stuff happens to him from messing with the Ouija board.
Have you ever watched the ghost cams at the Willard Public Library? Supposedly the building is so haunted that they've set ghost cameras up to catch paranormal activity, and you can find it all streaming live on their website. This is something that has just recently been brought to my attention by the creator that I've tagged in my description, so of course, when I heard about this, I had to go see it for myself. And it's true, they actually have ghost cams on at all times. On their website, they also give you a history of the known apparition that has been reported there the most, and they call her the Gray Lady. They've even had police summoned there because of a security alarm that was triggered, and according to these officers, one of them went inside to investigate and the other watched from the parking lot. Well, the officer that was in the parking lot said that he saw the ghost of a woman with a shadowy figure beside her through the window of the building. So when his colleague emerged, he asked if he had seen them, but they found no trace of anyone inside. Here's another story from the library assistant that's posted on their website. It says, shortly after being hired, a library assistant bravely addressed the Gray Lady while walking alone on the adult services floor. She politely asked not to be frightened and suggested the ghost communicate in gentler ways. Moments later, the elevator doors opened unexpectedly, the call light illuminated despite no one being inside. The assistant approached cautiously, finding the elevator empty. She believed this encounter was the Gray Lady's response, welcoming her to the staff. I guess when the bathrooms were remodeled, the toilets started flushing on their own, so they had to call plumbers in, but there was no cause found. There was also a new projector that was installed that would move up and down by itself, so they called technicians in to investigate, but they couldn't figure it out either. They have this picture of the library founder's daughter hanging above the copier machine, and some people think that she could be the Gray Lady.